Welcome to Refined Resilience. I'm your host, Carrie Hill, and on this podcast, we highlight the small moments that shape our journey toward greatness and remind us that resilience isn't linear. Each episode features stories of perseverance and the little victories that often go unnoticed, illustrating that resilience is about finding strength in everyday life. Well, hi everyone. I am so excited to bring to you my good friend Brandy Vega on our podcast today. She's the founder of Vega Media Studios. She's a former broadcast journalist in the Army, which is amazing. She was also a Fox News reporter. She founded Good Deed Revolution nonprofit to promote kindness and social responsibility. And in 2021, after nearly losing a child to suicide, she launched Promise to Live, a campaign focused on mental health and suicide prevention. Her dedication extends to over 10,000 hours of community and humanitarian service. And as a mother who adopted through foster care and was a surrogate mother, Brandy exemplifies love. Her tireless efforts continue to make a profound impact, inspiring others to dream big and create positive change at home, in their community, and around the world. Hello, my gorgeous friend.
Oh, goodness. Hello. How are you?
I love reading everyone's bios. I love sharing with people who the guests are, because you, like so many other people that have been here, have lived a really full life. You've done a lot of unique, cool things, and it's just awesome to see what you've accomplished.
Well, thank you. It is fun because we meet people and we meet them in that chapter that they're in, and we don't know the previous chapters. So it's fun to sometimes dig in and go, wow, I had no idea that's part of your journey.
Yeah. You can know people for 10 years sometimes and not even really fully know what that journey has been like. So yeah. Do you know, I love when we met, Brandy, you know, we have a fun story. Yeah. We have like a fun dating story.
We do.
It feels like it. We connected on LinkedIn for literally like 9 years. We were connected on LinkedIn and we just kind of poked at each other like, hey, I see you. Hey, I see you. Mm-hmm. And then one day somebody said your name and I was like, why does that name sound familiar? And so I just reached out to you and we met for lunch. You were kind enough to entertain the invitation.
That's great.
And it was just really, it was such a beautiful conversation. It was so amazing to get to know you in person. And so I'm blown away with you still today, the same as I was when we sat and talked a year ago, which I can't even believe it's been a year.
Wow. Time flies. And the feeling's mutual. I think I have a love-hate with social media, right? Because we know like the suicides have gone up exponentially since social media, but also for me, like I've met some of the best people that I would have never met. I keep in touch with my family who's long distance and it's been great. Mm-hmm. So it was fun. Yeah. It's fun to like, for us to know each other for so long and to kind of peer in and peek and see things here and there and then get together and kind of feel like you know each other, but not really. Yeah. And then when you go out into the wild, you know, we go to some of these events and I'm looking at people going, and they come up and they're like, oh my gosh, how's this? How's that? How's this? And they know all these things about me and I've never met them. And they're like, oh, I follow you on social.
Yeah.
You're like,
dang, what did I even post last time?
Thank you. Please don't stalk me. Yeah. I'm a little bit careful because you mentioned I worked in TV and I came home and I did have a stalker once and it was kind of terrifying.
That's terrifying. Yeah.
You know,
just one of those normal
virtual
stalker stories. So.
Okay. But like, please don't show up at my house.
Yeah, no, thank you. You were so generous though. When I reached out, you were just like, yeah, okay, sure. I don't really know anything about you, Carrie, but to sit down and just have a lot of things in common and then just to hear your story. And I want other people that are listening that are not familiar with you and what you do and the work that you do to get to know who you are. And so tell me a little bit about your upbringing, where you came from, you know, what was that like for you?
I'm originally from Arizona. I'm one of two. Mm-hmm. I have an older sister who's about 3 years older than me. I have an amazing mom. But also, you know, we've been through challenges and my mom came from a very big family. And so she got married at a very young age. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it blows people's minds, but like she was married at 14.
Wow.
Had my sister at 15, had me at 19. And, you know, my parents dropped out of high school. And so life was hard and then they split up. And so from an early age, my mom showed me real grit, determination. She would work 2 or 3 almost minimum wage jobs just to try to feed us. And my sister and I had to be super independent. Yeah. You know, I remember at 5 years old, going door to door, asking, hey, can I pull weeds? Can I clean up after your dog? Selling pet rocks on the corner with little eyeballs. I'd paint them and put little googly eyes on them so that I could get something to eat. Because there were some days where, you know, as a kid, you only know what you know, but there were some days where I had a spoon of peanut butter for the whole day.
Wow.
And so really the work ethic in me had to come along at an early age, my entrepreneurial spirit. If I wanted shoes, if I wanted braces, you know, I paid for my braces. If I wanted to go to college, I knew I had to find a way to pay for it and join the military. And so she taught me a lot of great lessons, and I'm so thankful for that. But growing up wasn't very easy.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
No, not at all.
But you know what is so beautiful about that, Brandy, is that and we all are who we are today because of where we've been, and the amount of positive energy that you have put into the world from those experiences, especially related to children, foster care, you know, adoption, preventing suicide. I mean, hosting children in your home and then later getting married to have this beautiful environment that you have now. And we're going to talk all about that. But what a beautiful thing to look back and say, from a spoon of peanut butter to here. Yeah. I mean, what does that reflection look like for you?
I wrote my first book a couple of years ago. It's just a chapter in a collaborative book. But, you know, I was thinking about it, and there were some real key moments that hit me. One is when you notice. I know what it's like to be hungry. I know what it's like to be lonely. I know what it's like to be sad. I know. So because I know, I see that in other people. Also, there's a song that I love called "Because I've Been Given Much, I Too Must Give." And so for me, there were often times where we were the project for Christmas. Yeah. And now I get to do that. And it's just had such an impact that, okay, I'm in a position now that I can sort of pay it forward. And I think one of the other things that came to me throughout this process is life is what's given. Opportunity is what's taken. None of us get to determine the life we're born into, good or bad, indifferent, where we come from, who we're raised with. Yeah. But we all get to choose the opportunities we take. And that was kind of a pivotal moment where I just thought, you know, as a teenager, from the time I was 10 years old, I was watching TV. I said, I want to be a reporter. That's what I want to do. I want to tell stories. I want to work in media. I want to work in news. And I knew if it was going to be, it was up to me. And that's why I graduated early and joined the Army as a broadcaster and went all over the world, interviewed the president. Like, it was very cool. But I also, you know, it was this weight of you have to do that. But at the same point in time, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So I got this attitude of I can do anything I want to do if I put my mind to it. And that's what I've been kind of going after. That's what I think it taught me in life. And trying these things too, it was the quote, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. Right. And that resonates a lot with me. I would rather try and see where we land than never try. Yeah.
Do you know, that's really resonating with me, the opportunities taken, right? We take opportunities because sometimes I think we wait for the opportunity to be presented. Yeah. Right. And for us to be able to take an opportunity. And what I hear from you, Brandy, and I think this is innate to who you are. And for me, we're observers of opportunities. Right. Where are the opportunities? And if this is not there, but I see there might be, I'm going to make one.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Opportunist. Opportunity opportunist. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I really like that. And I see how that can work. I volunteered also at the hospital for 7 years. I did spiritual care at Intermountain Medical and I did Nobody Dies Alone. That right after a very painful divorce. And when you're going through heartache, you look at things and you can always see how it could be different or changed. Yeah. So the 7 years I spent doing spiritual care and then Nobody Dies Alone, when I talk to people, they always regretted the things they didn't do more than the things they did.
Yeah.
And they always regretted not focusing on their family and their relationships and their faith. And so it's taught me some really good lessons in life.
Tell me more about that, the program. For people that don't know a lot about it, including me, like, what is that program?
Well, unfortunately, they dissolved the program with COVID, which was horrible timing. But for about 7 years, I would go spiritual care. They had one full-time chaplain or even part-time at the hospital, and the rest of us were volunteer chaplains. So we would just donate at least 4 hours a month was our minimum requirement, and we would go. And then we had the Nobody Dies Alone, which was so humbling because you would go sit with people who had nobody with them and stay with them until they passed.
Yeah.
And it was such a sacred experience. As none of us come into this world alone, I don't think any of us should go out alone.
Yeah.
And what really like caught my eye in this whole situation is I sat with people who were experiencing homelessness. I also was there with one of the world's most renowned heart surgeons.
Wow.
I sat there with the founder of this huge multi-million-dollar company. And at the end of his days, he was there alone. And it just made me think, what kind of life are we putting together that's what it's going to be?
Yeah.
And I wanted to be there for somebody and just comfort them through that transition. But also for me, it really, really helped me to look at my life and triage and go, does this really matter? In the scheme of life, does this really matter? And that helped me in every aspect of my life.
Well, and you mentioned in your book, when you know, you notice. Right. And I think so much of just me knowing who you are, that empathy gene in you is really strong. And for you to have been, I'm assuming, in some pretty lonely places as you were growing up and in other parts of your life, going through divorce is very lonely. And you've been through so many things that we could reference, but I think being able to sit there with people and really know what that feels like to be alone, that's a whole nother level of love.
Yeah.
You're a very empathetic person.
I think so. And I don't know. That's why
girl,
I started.
You are an empathetic person.
Well, that's why I first started doing foster care.
Yeah.
I was working for ABC News, and I got tasked to do a story on the foster care gala and go meet the kids and all this. And I show up, I'm a news reporter, and I'm interviewing these kids. And I said to the first little boy, "What do you want for Christmas?" "Oh, I want a skateboard."
Yeah.
I interviewed the next kid. "What do you want for Christmas?" "I want a Game Boy." And I go to interview this next girl. And I said, "What do you want for Christmas?" She goes, "I really want a family this year."
Oh my gosh.
And that just knocked the wind right out of my sails. I thought, wow.
Yeah.
And she goes on and she says, "I promise I'll be really good. I won't cause any problems. I'll help around the house." And she's trying to sell herself on
Brandy.
this interview. Yeah, right?
My heart, just even hearing that. Yeah.
And that was me. I was, single mom with these two little girls. And I just thought, gosh, all she wanted was somebody to love her.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm not really good at a lot of things, but I love my kids. I am good at love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's actually when I decided to get my foster care license. I thought, you know what? I can do that. I can love somebody, because most of these kids are in the system through no fault of their own. And there's over 500,000. And, it was many years later, I ended up getting my license again. And that's when I ended up getting my son and being able to adopt him through foster care.
Well, and you have beautiful stories that are attached to these, things that you've just stated. But one thing that you are just really, it's your gift, I think, Brandy, to see where the holes are in something and know that you could actually fill it, and to find a way to be able to do that. And that's a really rare, if you think about all the philanthropists in the world, all the volunteers in the world, compared to the population of the world, it's a very small percentage of people that actually step up to fill a need.
When you notice, right?
Yeah.
So when I was 15 years old, living in Nevada, I was going with my best friend to a baseball game, and we're driving. We go over the hill. There's a baseball cap in the road. We're kids. We're silly. Hit it, 10 points. She runs over the baseball cap. And then I'm like, why is there a baseball cap in the road? And I look over in the field and I see this light shining from the field that shouldn't, it's like, that's out of place. And I told her, I said, turn around.
Yeah.
And she turned around and I said, pull over. And as I got closer, I could see it was a headlight. And I went running over there, and I saw that there was somebody crashed on a motorcycle. And I told my friend, this was in 1992. I'm old. I'll own it.
You're not your classic.
It's fine. I'm a vintage. And so I told her, run and call 911.
Yeah.
No cell phones. And she takes off to go call, and I'm running over, and I'm holding this guy's hand, and I'm trying to comfort him. And, you know, it's very traumatic.
Yeah.
Impaled on, you know, a branch and just all these different things. And so I'm over there, and I'm trying to keep this guy comforted. And time is passing, and I can tell he's slipping away. And so I run out to the street. I'm 15 years old, and I'm flagging down cars. Please stop. I need help. And do you know how many cars drove by me? Multiple cars drove by this kid who was frantic on the side of the road trying to get them to stop. And finally I stood in the middle of the road, and this car stopped. And they came over, and they brought a blanket. And then about that time, the ambulance arrived. And I sat there, and I held this guy's hand while the ambulance was there. And he ended up passing while I was holding his hand.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember thinking at that point in time, I don't know that my heart's ever been so broken. You know, when you need help and you're begging for help.
Yeah.
And and nobody helps.
Yeah.
I made a promise at that moment that I would always stop. I would never leave anybody who needed help. If I could do something, I would do something, because I felt so helpless, and I felt so abandoned and just heartbroken.
Yeah.
And that was the moment for me at 15 where I just said, I'll never leave anyone. I won't. I'll step up.
Yeah.
Everybody always says somebody should do something, but oftentimes people don't want to be the somebody.
Yeah.
And I decided at that moment that I would be the somebody, because you don't have to be a doctor. You just have to care.
Yeah.
And that was really all I needed.
Yeah.
And so that kind of shifted everything and changed a lot of things in my life,
so
that
powerful.
I would never leave anyone.
Yeah. Well, and it's really clear in the work that you've done, you know, through not only just the spiritual care that you've offered and through foster care, but also through your work with Promise to Live, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
You know, Brandy, something I didn't know about you, well, that I didn't know about you, but thank you for sharing that. Something that you shared with me just a few weeks ago, actually, that I didn't know, was your experience as a surrogate mom. And I don't think we talk a lot about that experience in our life. You know, we say, oh, we're using a surrogate, and we move on. Right. But like, what was that experience like for you? Because you were in a time of life where you really wanted to have another child, and, you know, so go through that whole thing with me.
Well, life is funny. I mean, it never goes like you think it's going to go.
No.
And so I found myself, I got married again and found out the guy was having an affair 6 months in. I was totally devastated and heartbroken.
Yeah.
And you question everything. And I remember having a breakdown in my car saying, why God? Why me? Why me? Why me? What did I do to deserve this? And it was at that point that I realized I'd never submitted my will, and I learned to trust God. And that changed everything for me, because I realized, talking about my past and my history, if it was going to happen, it was up to me.
Yeah.
It was me. And submit was a dirty word. It was like, if you got submitted, you were being pinned or held down, or you were losing the match, or whatever it was. But at that point in time, I learned that I had to submit my will to God's will, because he knows me better. He knows my life. He knows my purpose, and what I thought I needed and what I thought should be happening wasn't happening. And so this was about 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just had this complete turnaround in the parking lot where I said, okay, I submit. I give up. I'm not going to think I know what's best for me anymore. I'm just going to move forward in faith.
Yeah.
And that changed everything. I mean, that's when I started my nonprofit. It's when I started my business. It's when I started doing spiritual care. It's when I went back and got my foster care license. And I was so sad because I wanted more kids. I had my 2 girls, and I always wanted more. And I felt like, again, it wasn't fair. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, I'd have these dreams about a little boy. And I just thought, for sure, I'm supposed to have a boy. How's this not working out? Then when I talked to the foster care system, they didn't allow single parents to get babies. And it was this big process. And anyway, we're just kind of going through this. And one day I'm 39 years old, almost 40. I see on social media, one of my friends saying, hey, a good friend of mine has cancer and she had cancer and she lost her ability to have children. Would you please consider, would anyone consider being a surrogate?
Wow.
And I had never thought about it in my life. And I just kind of, looked at it and let it go. And then all day and the next day I kept thinking about it. So then I went back and I reached out and I just said, do you want to tell me a little bit about it? And long story short, I started the process. I know it's quite lengthy.
Yeah.
And then I did a thing with Robert Kiyosaki and I went overseas and apparently there was Zika. So I got put on a 6-month medical hold, even though I was fine. And when I got done with that, I said, hey guys, I'm off the medical hold. Let's do this. And they said, actually, we're not going to do it with you. We found another surrogate. And I was just blown away because you'd sacrificed so much. Yeah. Like it's quite the process. And I wasn't just doing it to be a surrogate. I was doing it for them because I felt called or inspired to do that. And so that was a little bit disappointing. And I put it on a shelf. And then the attorney reached out and he said, hey, Brandy, would you consider meeting this other family? I said, no way. And he's like, I'm not a surrogate just for hire or whatever. No, this isn't my thing. And then he calls me back and I know me, Carrie, I don't go to the Humane Society. I'm going to leave with a pet.
Right.
I knew if I met them, I'd probably be doing it. And he called me again and he's like, but you've done all this stuff. They're a great family. And so I went and met with them and they're like, would you please consider having our baby, carrying our baby? And, again, I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in God. And I took it to him and I was praying about it. I felt so strongly that the only way this little girl is going to come into the world is if you do this and we need her. She's got work to do. And so I decided to do it, which was interesting. Some people want to go do 40 acts of kindness or travel to 40 places. I just, for my 40th birthday, got really big. I didn't do anything big. I got big and I had this little girl and, everybody's going, can you be a surrogate? I'm like, I don't know. I've never done it before.
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to give her up? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think so, because in my mind, I looked at it as internal foster care.
Yeah.
I was a glorified nanny. But also now fast forward, I start this process. It's kind of funny because I'd been doing the process for almost a year. And then I got Blaze, who's my little foster baby, in April. And then in November, we did the surrogacy.
Wow.
And I'm a single mom. I've got my 2 daughters.
Yeah.
So now I've got a 6-month-old, 7-month-old, and I get pregnant to be a surrogate.
Wow.
And so we go through the whole process and I'm the single mom with this newborn for the full year. I had the baby. He was just over a year old.
Wow.
So it was a lot easier for me to give her up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm like, I just went through the newborn phase as a single mom with my little boy that I had gotten. And in my mind, this baby was never mine. I was just the good auntie or nanny. And it's been awesome. Every single month they send me a photo of her.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's just really cool.
Do you know what I love that you said about this experience though, was that the overwhelming feeling that you had was this girl has work to do. And if she's not here, I can't use her, right? The divine voice. I can't do the work. And you really are, you exemplify faith in so many ways, Brandy. I think anyone that knows you would say first and foremost, she's faithful. Like you have real integrity around your faith.
Thank you.
And it's really beautiful. And so I love when you speak about those moments because I believe them.
Oh, good.
Like
I do too.
Yeah. Like I feel that, but I feel the experience that you went through because it's true. It happened for you and you can feel the power of that. And I think you've taken that power and you've opened your home to kids. You talk about having Blaze and there's a really beautiful story around Blaze.
Yeah.
And I want to hear that. I want everybody else to hear that story too, because for anybody that is in the foster care, as a foster parent who really wants to adopt, who really the intention and the intention of what that, of bringing another child into your family is good and it should be rewarded, but it's not always and especially not in the way that you think it's going to be. So tell me about Blaze, because he's so cute.
Oh my gosh. So many miracles along the way. You know, I was telling you, I had the dream about the baby and I kept seeing this kid, and then I'm divorced. I'm like, this is never going to happen. I get my license. The caseworker says, sorry, we don't give single parents babies. And I'm like, this isn't fair. You'd give me 3 babies. I had like a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So we're going through this whole process, and I just built my studio.
Yeah.
And that was a big undertaking. And I get a phone call from my caseworker, and he goes, Brandy, I have a baby. He's 2 days old. He's born on drugs and has some addiction. But if you can come and get him, he goes, I've never had this happen in my entire career.
Wow.
He said, I called every 2-parent home on the entire list and nobody could take him. So if you're available to come now, he gets to go with you. I said, okay. And I jumped in my car and I drove to Ogden and I went and I met him, and he was just the cutest thing. And he looked like the baby that I had seen in my dreams. And I went and I got to see him. He had to stay at the hospital.
Yeah.
The next day I bring the girls and we were able to bring him home. I mean, I literally had 24 hours notice that I was getting this baby.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Speaking of faith, I had some pretty incredible experiences with a leader named Thomas S. Monson, and that really changed my faith and my belief system. And so when I got the baby, I named him Blaze Monson after this leader. And 3 months later, I had to go do an overnight shoot for production.
Yeah.
And I needed a family that could watch him, and it had to be a family in the foster care system. So when I get there, here's what's interesting. The lady comes up and I get into her house and she goes, is this the little boy that was born in April? I said, yeah. She goes, when they called me, we wanted a boy so bad. We wanted a baby, my husband and I. She said, but the spirit was so strong, you cannot take him. She said, and I couldn't understand it. And so I called my husband and said, they have a baby for us right now that we can go get.
Wow.
And he said he got the strongest impression that he is not your son. Do not get him. And they both said a prayer and they got confirmation that he can't be yours. She goes, and I know that this little boy was supposed to be your baby. And at that moment we got to talking, and it turns out that she was President Monson's secretary.
Wow.
And I was like, his middle name is Monson. So there's one of the very cool stories about how I actually got him in the first place, because it shouldn't have happened, and it did. And I knew that that was a blessing. And then fast forward, I'm single. We're doing all this stuff. We're going through things.
3 kids now.
3 kids. Yeah. Yep. And, the girls are a little bit older, and I pick Blaze up from daycare. It's around Christmas time, and I get him and he's all excited. And I said, well, what do you want to go do, buddy? And he's like, I want to go see my daddy. And he's 2.5.
Yeah.
Like not even 3 yet.
Right.
And I said, well, you don't have a dad. And he starts crying in the back seat, in his little car seat. And he's like, but I want a daddy. And he's sobbing, I want a daddy. I want a daddy. Yeah. And my heart was broken again, because this is the one thing I couldn't give him.
Right.
I could give him everything. I could give him the love. I could give him food, shelter, but I didn't have that. And so I felt so bad. And it was right around Christmas. So for New Year's, I went on Facebook and I said, all right, guys, here you go. I said, I've been single for almost 10 years. 2020 is going to be a great year, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it a great year, everybody? I said, 2020 is the year I'm ready to start dating, and I want to find Blaze a good dad. Yeah. And so if you know me, I'm open to a date. Wow. You can set me up. And I go on a few blind dates, Carrie, you can probably relate. And I was like, yes, this is exactly why I'm single. It was horrible. Yeah. And so then I pause it, and then, we're in COVID and we're locked down. And so Blaze barely turns 3. My daughter and I have a conversation. She's like, Mom, you should start dating.
Yeah.
I said, no, now's a horrible time. No, it's a great time. So I get on my phone, because I had a dating app, because I was doing an online course at my studio for the online dating do's and don'ts. So I go through, and Blaze comes over. He just turned 3, and he's like, who's that? I was like, some guy. How do you explain a dating app to a 3-year-old? A newly 3-year-old. I was just like, another dirtbag. I don't
talk to strangers as you scroll.
Yeah, some scary guy probably would break my heart. Yeah. Anyway, so we're looking at it, and he wouldn't leave me alone. I'm like, go play. Won't do it. So finally, because I failed to mention that for the past 3-4 months, every single man he saw, he'd be like, "Are you my daddy?
Oh my
Are you my daddy?
Oh my gosh.
He's going up to people in the store. Are you my daddy?" And I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. This is embarrassing. I said, he's adopted.
Yeah.
I would know who his dad was.
Right.
I'm not that kind of girl. Right. And anyway.
Just to put you at ease.
So he's saying all this and it's embarrassing and sad. And he wouldn't go. I'm like, go play. No, he wouldn't. So finally I do this.
Yeah.
Does this look like your daddy? No. We're on my phone swiping. Does this look like your dad? No. Finally, this picture pops up and he loses his little mind. He starts jumping up and down. He's pointing. That's my daddy. That's my daddy. He's my daddy. And I was like, are you sure? Because the guy was cute. I was like, he's cute enough. But the bio was like red flag, recently divorced, dealing with some drama.
Right.
Heavy baggage. I mean, I don't know what it was, but it was one of those that was actually probably, really written and authentic instead of everyone else who sugarcoats it all.
Yeah.
But my little guy was like, that's my daddy. That's my daddy. I said, are you sure? Yeah.
Wow.
So I swipe right on him. We go through 50, 60 people. He said no to every single person. 20, 30 minutes later, that guy messages me. He's like, I just got on here yesterday. I'm recently divorced, separated for 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Would you meet me tomorrow? And I was like, you know what? Okay. We'll meet.
Why not?
We'll meet. We can't go on a date. We'll meet at Fizz. We'll sit in the car, have a drink, a soda.
Yeah.
And if it's bad, I'm out of there in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
5 hours later.
Oh my goodness.
Next day, 10 hours, 12 hours. Thanks to COVID, we had accelerated dating.
So much time.
And within 2 months, we were married.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize it was 2 months.
Yeah, it was quick.
That's incredible. I've never heard this story, by the way. This is awesome.
You haven't heard this story?
Yeah,
Blaze picked his daddy. And it was so funny because I said, all right. So I ended up telling him, I didn't want to scare him off, but I was like, no offense, but I would have never picked you. I would have never picked you because I didn't date people that were recently divorced. I didn't any of this stuff. I said, but he was so sure you were his dad.
Yeah.
And so after 2 years, I said, once, if we make it 2 years, I'm scared. I have cold feet after the past.
Yeah.
I said, then you can adopt him. And he did.
Oh
so Blaze got to pick his dad. And then 2 years later, his dad picked him and we were adopted and
oh my goodness.
All the things.
Well, and he's so perfect for you guys and he's so good with Blaze.
Yeah.
So it's what a beautiful thing. Isn't that interesting how families come together?
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
I couldn't pick him, but apparently my 3-year-old could.
Yeah.
So if you need help, he's 7 now. But
Blaze is available. Matchmaker service. That's incredible. And again, just another testament of your faith and your confidence in your, in your community, in your people, in your kids. Like, I don't know very many women that would say, is this your dad? Is this your dad? Right? At that point. So just the inclusion of that, I think is really just a beautiful exercise just by itself, Brandy. And so I give kudos to you for that because I think sometimes we minimize kids. We minimize their instincts and what they believe and how they feel. And kids are the most resilient of us all, aren't they?
But that was part of the submission process, Carrie.
Yeah.
Because for me, I had always been like, I have to do this. This is what I can. I was controlling everything. I was trying to control everything.
Yeah.
And then I realized I don't get to control everything. And that's when I learned to trust God and just say, okay, everyone thought I was completely out of my mind.
Right.
You're a single mom. You're building a company. You're starting a nonprofit. You're adopting through foster care. Yeah. You're a surrogate. Like, what in the world are you even thinking? I mean, I had people who were like, my mom goes, You're crazy. I said, well, of course I'm crazy, but I'm a good crazy because who in their right mind would do that? Right.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where I didn't know, I couldn't make it make sense, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And so I just moved forward.
Yeah.
And that's how it was with him. I just thought, okay, I'm trusting, I'm submitting my will because I for sure wouldn't go. And then there it was. And it's been this beautiful process when I learned to give up control and just move forward in faith. Like you can't ask God to move your feet if you're not willing to walk. So you can't say, hey, guide me if you're not willing to move. So I've been moving and sometimes, you go in a straight line and other times it's uphill and sometimes you fall down the hill and whatever it is, but it's changed everything for the better because I've done things that would never make sense to me that I would have refused to do.
Do you know, Brandy, what was that? Surrender, right? Surrender is hard for me. And I think for single moms, especially, it's hard because you're constantly doing, right? You're there, you're talking, you're healing, you're moving, you're making all the decisions in your family for all the things. And so you have to be measured, right? And you have to be disciplined in order to make all those things work and happen. Yeah. And so when you're really in a space where you're just like, whatever I'm doing is not the thing, giving that, surrendering that will it's a painful, it can be.
It was
the
hardest
process.
thing I ever did, Carrie.
Yeah.
It was literally, because I'm having this breakdown in the car, and as I'm sitting there crying and I'm so upset, like, why me?
Yeah.
I didn't do anything to deserve this. And it wasn't what I wanted. And I was devastated, and I didn't know how I was going to push forward. And that's when I heard the voice say, do you trust me? And I was like, of course I trust you.
Yeah.
This is weird. Who's talking to me? But I was like, yes. Yeah. And I was like, do you trust me?
Yeah.
And I thought, okay. And that's when I went on this search of, do I trust? Do I trust? And I looked, and I spent 3 days online trusting God, trusting in the Lord. What does trust mean? Blah, blah, blah. And I ended up finding this talk by Richard G. Scott that was called Trusting in the Lord. And it was from 1995. And I listened to it, and it blew my mind. It was the pivot. It was the turning point for me, because I learned up until that point, I hadn't trusted anybody but myself. It was myself that had to get it done. And I was at a point where no matter what I did, I couldn't fix the problem because it was not mine to fix. And so from that moment, it was the hardest thing, but bit by bit, I surrendered. Yeah. I submitted my will and just said, okay, I'm going to move forward in faith.
Yeah. What did that look like for you though, Brandy, in those moments? Like looking back, you can see, I was able to surrender, but in the moment when you're actually doing it, what did you pull from to be able to surrender in the moments that it was really hard?
I mean, Carrie, there were days I couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
I was like so emotionally just drained and crying my eyes out and trying to maintain and be a mom and take care of my kids and run my company and do all the things that I'm doing. And so it was really, really hard. And I just trusted. I just moved forward in faith. I mean, it took a lot of faith, a lot of prayer. And I just kept moving forward going, okay, I know people say this is happening to you. Well, it's happening for me. And why is it happening for me? And that's kind of what I've reshaped to look at it. There's the story of the Chinese farmer, right?
Yes.
And his horse runs off and the townspeople say, oh, that's horrible. Your horse ran off. And he says, maybe, maybe not. Then the horse comes back with a bunch of other horses and everybody says, wow, what great luck. And he says, maybe not.
Yeah.
And and then at the end, it's like the horse bucks his son off and breaks his back and whatever it is. But it's like, you can look at things and say, maybe, maybe not. Because you don't know if something is for your benefit or not.
Yeah.
So now as I look at things and I go, man, we went through some really, really hard times. But if I hadn't been through those, I couldn't have done what I've done.
Yeah.
So it's just a way of reframing it and say, why is this happening for me? And what can I glean from it?
Well, and I think too, like releasing the control over, when we do try to control, we think that we can actually have impact on the outcome.
Right.
We think we put our hope in the result of what it is that we're trying to work toward.
Yeah.
And we lose the faith journey. Right. Yep. So I really appreciate that about you, Brandy, that you were able to go to those moments of just saying, no, I don't know. I don't have all the answers and I don't know best. So.
Yeah. I thought I knew what was best for me, but then you realize and you're like, okay, I don't know what's best for me. And so I'm not going to pretend I know what's best for me either.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I feel like you've taken that exact strength and that faith and that control, and it served you really, really well, moving into the nonprofit work that you've taken on. You are, Brandy, you're just really gritty. You're really gritty, like you get in and you put your hands in and it doesn't matter if they get rough. It doesn't matter if they're calloused. You do. I love that you went into the military. I mean, you want to talk about a gritty kind of decision, you made that choice and it ended up being an incredible experience.
Right.
And you're a badass. Like you're a badass woman, and I love that. And I share that patriotism and that, military background myself. And so I automatically have respect for you because you chose that route. And it is a hard, difficult route to go.
It was.
Yeah. And, but you were able to dig into these kinds of experiences from your childhood, from joining the military, into this middle part that we've just talked about. And now the most recent work that you're doing is with Promise to Live, and it's with suicide prevention. And so, this whole podcast is about resilience.
Right.
And this is what you do, is teach people in the moment that they are leaning toward ending their life, how to be resilient in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. So, everybody that knows you knows this story and knows why you were motivated to found Promise to Live. But I just want you to give us a different perspective. Give us something different that maybe you haven't shared with people about this journey, and why you're so driven about it.
I'm driven because I didn't know if my kid was going to live or die.
Yeah.
And I made God a promise, if he saved her, I would do the work. And because of that, I've done all the work. And, I was driving, my child got sick this week, and I'm happy to report this. Okay. For those who don't know, she tried to end her life at 12 and it was terrifying, but we didn't talk because of the shame and the stigma and the fear. And it was horrible. It was a dirty secret. And then she tried again 2 years later. And thankfully her friend had the courage to call 911 and we got to her in time, but we didn't know for a few days. And it was just terrifying. And that time I spoke out. And I think that that's one of those things too. You question, you say, okay, I don't get to control this.
Yeah.
And why is this happening for us again? And what should we do with this?
Yeah.
Because I'd rather do almost anything. I mean, not anymore, because I found that this is my calling and my purpose with the work that we're doing. But it was terrifying. And at that moment, it brought me back to thinking about the hospital and sitting there with those patients. And I was holding my daughter's hand and she was unresponsive. And I was just pleading for a second chance. And I was told again, I'll give you a second chance. There won't be a third. And within an hour, she woke up. And I asked her, are you glad you're awake, or do you really wish you would have died? And she said, Mom, I didn't really want to die, but it was too late. And this is what we've learned. And this is what I know about suicide, is people don't want to die. They just want to kill the pain.
Yeah.
And so, I've been working on this now for three plus years. I'm happy to report she graduated a full year early on the honor roll. She has her own apartment. Amazing. Breaks my heart.
Yeah.
She's an incredible artist. Just made, the mascot for the Dallas Mavericks.
Oh my gosh.
Super
exciting.
Talented at barely 18.
Yeah.
But, she called me this week and she was feeling pretty sick. And she said, can you bring me lunch? And I broke away from work and the hustle and bustle, because we all know there's a lot of things going on. And I picked her up lunch. And just as I was driving there, I passed a cemetery. And Carrie, it hit me so hard. How lucky I am that I get to drive and go see my baby and bring her lunch instead of mourn her. And it was so close. And, one of the sweet, most incredible people I know, she's on my advisory team, and she lost all 3 of her sons to suicide. And I was talking to her today. And so it's not lost on me, because every day I'm getting messages from people who are hurting so bad and struggling and don't know where to go or who to talk to, or they don't feel like they matter. And just being able to do something that lets people know, hey, I love you. You do matter. There is help. There is hope. And having that chance with my child, I'd do anything for the rest of my life. I'll work every day in gratitude for the opportunity that I have.
Gosh, Brandy is so beautiful. And I love the name. I'm proud to be associated with you for this organization and its Promise to Live. And you brought some of these coins for us to show, but I love these coins because, well, I'll let you tell about the coins.
Well, this is fun. I don't know if you have you heard the backstory of the coins?
Yeah.
So just briefly for your audience. Yeah. The work that we do is hard. Being a single mom's hard. Being a business, being alive is hard. Being a human is hard. Okay. We get it. It is. But sometimes you get these added things. Yeah. So like parenting hard, running a company hard, economy, whatever. Yeah. I get a letter in the mail from one of my husband's friends who I barely met. And it just says, how are you doing? I hope I see all the stuff you're doing. And even if nobody tells you, like, good job.
Yeah.
and it just really, it meant a lot. And there was a generic pocket hug. I'd never seen one, and it just said pocket hug, and it had this message, and I took it, and it was so cool. I put it in my pocket. This was in September. November, my friend's son dies, and she asked me to come speak at his funeral. And I met them when I volunteered at the hospital when their daughter died. And the daughter's death was ruled a suicide, and the son's death was maybe similar. And overdose, so anyhow, she asked me to come and speak at the funeral, and this is hard because it's her second child. He's 35, and I'm standing there, and I'm struggling so much because my heart is broke. I can't even imagine what she's going through. And also it's like a reminder that I see the casket, it's like I see my kid there, because we were almost there. We were so close. And I reached in my pocket, and I gave her my pocket hug that I'd been holding on to for weeks. And I said, I want you to have this. And she took it, she put it in her hand in her pocket, and she held on to it. And she messaged me a week later, and she goes, I just need you to know what that coin meant to me. That little pocket hug you gave, she goes, I felt like you were with me all week. I felt like you were there hugging me and giving me courage and helping me to get out of bed. She said, that got me through the hardest week of my life. And it had gotten me through some hard times, Carrie. So that's when I was like, you know what is the power of a pocket hug? And so I went to work, and we created these, and we put our website on it so people could find resources in one place, because we don't care about ego, only impact.
That's right.
So you can find all the resources. And then on the back, we did this message, and it says, when times are tough and you don't know what to do, here's a hug from me to you. Call or text 988 if you're struggling. And for those who are watching or listening, if you haven't heard of 988, it's a 911 for mental health. It's been out for a few years, and we just want people to have a tangible token of love and of hope. And know that they can get through it.
And reach out. It's a reminder, reach out to someone.
It was so fun at lunch today. I'm talking to this gal, and she goes, hey, I did a project with you. One of the very first ones a year ago when we first launched these. And she said, I kept them with me, and I gave them out. She goes, I wanted to share one of the stories. She said, I had it in my car, and I saw this elderly homeless couple. And I stopped the car, and I went over to give him some money. She goes, but I had the letter that I had written, because we do heartfelt letters of love and stuff. And I had the coin. And she said, I gave it to him, and then I went and sat in my car. She goes, and I watched him open it up. She said, and he sat there and he read it. And then she goes, I watched him wipe the tears away. And then he showed his wife, and she looked at it, and they were both just holding this coin, and they were both just crying, and then gave each other a hug. And for her to share that story with me today, because there's so many of them out there. Kevin Hines, if you know his story, he almost, he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. He's one of the only few survivors. But he said, if anybody notices me or acknowledges me, I won't do it. And he got the whole way. He walked like 2 miles crying, and nobody noticed or acknowledged him. And he jumped. Sometimes we all just need to be seen. And that's what this does. So we ask people to go to Promise to Live, the number 2. And when you go on there, we want people to make the promise to live, which is really a promise to reach out for help. Unfortunately, every 40 seconds, somebody dies by suicide. In 25 or 30 seconds, you can look me in the eye, or you can go online and make a promise that if I ever find myself in that dark place, I promise to reach out to a friend, a family member, trusted resources that we share, or call or text 988. And that takes 25, 30 seconds. So we feel like something so simple is significant because the power of a promise, we've talked about that. That's why I'm doing all the work. But there are studies that say if you make a promise, you're up to 60% more likely to keep it. That's not in mental health specifically, but overall. So we're going, okay, well, if you don't love yourself enough to stay, but you can promise somebody else, it might get you through the moment. And if you feel seen. So when people make the promise to live, we give them a coin to keep, and we give them
one to give away,
a coin to give.
That's right.
We're trying to help with this epidemic of loneliness and isolation.
Well, and I love too, Brandy, because what this really does is also say, I'm a supporter of somebody who I have promised I will be there for that person when they reach out, right? So the accountability of that mutual partnership is really successful.
And with the holidays approaching, there's all these things that happen. And the lady that I mentioned, whose son and daughter both died, I texted her last night, and I said, hey, you've been on my heart and my mind. I want to know, how are you really doing? That's the one word that gets people to really talk. If you want to know how someone's doing, don't just say, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
How are things?
Yeah.
Say, Carrie, how are you really doing?
Right.
And I said this to my friend, and she shared the most heartbreaking message of what the struggle is and how hard it is. And then she wrote me back later and she goes, I don't normally share any of that with people. I just have this sugar-coated answer.
Yeah, right.
She said, but the one word that got me to open up was really.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage people to do that too.
Yeah.
I've got 2 challenges. Yeah. So
yeah.
ask people, like, moving forward, how are you really doing, or how are you really? And then the second challenge for them is ask the people around you, your kids, your spouse, your coworkers, point blank, Carrie, how are you doing? Are you feeling suicidal? Because honest questions get honest answers.
Right.
We don't plant ideas.
Yeah.
And that could save a life. And then you don't have to be the expert. Like MTV, we partnered with them.
Yeah.
They have an acronym called ASK, ASK. Ask the question and then acknowledge. That's the A. S is support. I'm really sorry you're going through that. Do you know that there's resources? And then the K is keep in touch.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be afraid to ask.
Right.
Just ask.
Well, and especially if you know that there's somebody there who's also said, I make the promise to be there for you. Like, that you've got a built-in, network. And what I really do love about this, Brandy, is you really are, resilience is in that moment. Like, you really are giving people a tool to say, I can move forward. I can do something different. I can come out of this in this moment. It's not about tomorrow. It's not about the next day. It's just this incremental one moment. And that is really where resilience happens, is in the moment.
Right.
Right. That we make a different choice.
Yeah.
So I love the work that you're doing. And you are, literally, I can just envision, I know I referenced it earlier, but just envision this little girl with a peanut butter with pet rocks, out there in the world being amazing, all the way to doing this incredible work. And that's just such a beautiful journey, Brandy. And I really appreciate you being here and sharing it with me. So just one last question. What do you do to be resilient in your life today?
What a great question. I surround myself with people that I love, that love me. And that's super helpful. But I'll tell you, my next goal is, I've been reminded because I've been brought to my knees this year, is I'm going to simplify to magnify.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on faith, family, and philanthropy, promise to live. That's how I fuel my soul. I fuel my soul by knowing that I'm making a difference.
Yeah.
And that what I'm doing matters. And the people that I'm around love me. Life's too short for anything else. Yeah. And so it's just a matter. And also assume everybody loves you. Life's better if you just automatically think, why wouldn't they?
That's true.
We're so good at thinking, oh gosh, she didn't say anything to me, or they probody don't like me. It's like, no, just assume they love you.
Yeah.
Unless they tell you you're awful, and then just block them.
Solutions to all problems. Block.
Hey, I'm here for that. Right.
Well, thank you so much for making the time, not only just for me as your friend, but just to be here professionally and represent what you're doing in your life and this amazing journey. So where can we find you?
Well, I want to say first that thank you to you.
Oh.
You're a Wonder Woman and you're an inspiration, and you shine and you light up and you amplify. And so I love what you are doing, and I'm just thankful. This is what fuels me, is being around incredible humans like you.
Oh,
if people want to find us, you're welcome. And I genuinely mean that. You're just incredible.
Thank you, Brandy.
I love awesome people who are just good. Is there anything better than a good person?
No, I agree with you.
But you can find more information at promise2live.org. Promise to Live. We're doing all kinds of campaigns year round. We're doing the Pocket Hug Project. We do an annual global live stream where we reach nearly 3 million people in September. And we do that every September 10th. We do our town halls, our monthly mental health town halls with silicone slopes, and just lots of great things.
Yeah.
So we want people involved, get engaged, ask questions. Yeah. But more than anything, make the promise to live yourself, and then get the people you love to make that same promise.
Please do. Yeah. And also it extends to other states. We're not just, it's not just here in Utah. So this is something that can go.
Countries.
Yeah. That's amazing. Congratulations. So please, if you are listening and this message touches you, please share it with, with your audience, with your family, with your friends, with your companies.
Right.
Because this is an epidemic. Suicide is an epidemic. And we need to do everything that we can to support those who are stepping up and filling the hole when we're not able to. So thank you so much, Brandy.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Refined Resilience. We hope you found inspiration in the stories shared and the small moments that remind us all of our strength. Remember, resilience is built not just in the big challenges we face, but in the everyday experiences that shape who we are. A special thanks to our sponsor, Build Then Bless, for making Refined Resilience possible. Until next time, remember, it's the small moments of resilience that make us great.